and pause the recording. And then we
Okay,
can
I'm gonna
start.
start letting people in.
Perfect.
Good luck, guys.
Thanks. We'll need it. Oh boy, this is great. Everyone's coming on in. What a lovely day. Hello, everybody. Everyone is welcome to keep their cameras on so we can see your faces, which is fantastic. We just ask that you keep your speaker on mute or your microphone on mute until you have a question or a comment, which would be great. Good afternoon, and thanks everyone for showing up. Welcome to Urban Art Biz, brought to you in partnership with Urban Shaman Gallery. I'm Arlie Ashcroft of mixed Anishinaabe Saulteaux French ancestry. My birth family comes from Pine Creek First Nation, and I'm the Indigenous Programs Manager at Creative Manitoba. And I'd like to acknowledge the ancestral lands on which we are located and pay tribute to our ancestors who walked this earth for centuries. We are on Treaty 1 territory, home of the Anishinaabe, the Cree, the Ojibwe, the Dakota, and the Dene people, and the home of the Red River Métis Nation. These are the lands inhabited by our ancestors, the first storytellers, and who, as artists, we are carrying on the oral traditions in our work. We also acknowledge Shoal Lake 40 First Nation for being guardians of our water with gratitude. Water is life. Today, we are talking about how to pitch a show to Urban Shaman Gallery with our guest, Justin Bear L Arrivee, the artistic director of Urban Shaman Gallery. Now, Justin is of mixed Cree and Scottish ancestry from Peguis First Nation and a citizen of the Manitoba Métis Federation. He is an arts administrator, facilitator, and community worker who's passionate about revitalizing Indigenous ways of being through arts and culture. Now, although we have partnered with Urban Shaman in this series for 4 years now, and through many other programs that we've run, we have never focused on Urban Shaman Gallery. So I am thrilled that that is our focus today. So we're going to learn about the impact of Urban Shaman Gallery in the contemporary art scene, and we're going to focus on how to submit a proposal to have a show at Urban Shaman Gallery. So I would like to give you Justin.
Hey everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks for the introduction as well. That was awesome. Yeah, I'm Justin Bear L Arrivee. I'm the artistic director at Urban Shaman. And yeah, like Arlie said, my family's from Peguis First Nation on my mom's side, and my dad's side is Métis, and our family's from St. Boniface in southern Manitoba area. I'm an artist. I'm a printmaker and graphic designer. And I'm an arts facilitator. So I've been doing that for a number of years and working in artist-run centers for a long time. And I also have a background in community work. So I've worked in child welfare. I've done support work and worked with adults with FAS. And I've done like quite a bit of community activism in my life. So one thing I bring to the arts world is a lens, a community-based lens. And I draw a lot from my experience in the social work world. So it's really important for me to make sure that artists are feeling supported, and that I have connections in the community so I can support people at the ground level. So that's kind of a part of the idea of this workshop. Is a little bit of skill building on like how to pitch an exhibition. This workshop revolves around pitching an exhibition to Urban Shaman, but it also can apply to pitching an exhibition to any gallery. So there's a few things I can share about that. Let me just share my screen. Hold on a sec. What am I doing? You know when your brain doesn't work sometimes? Sure. Okay.
I think it's very important, and I'm glad you mentioned that, even though the focus is on Urban Shaman Gallery and pitching a show to you, that these are all skills that you can use to pitch to other galleries as well.
Yes, yeah. And so that's kind of how Urban Shaman sees herself too, is like we're an artist run center, we're grassroots. So we do a lot of work with emerging artists, people who may not have submitted a show before, people who it might be their first solo show. So a part of the way we support our artists is through educating of all the steps and the whole process of how an exhibition actually happens. And then it allows artists to leave Urban Shaman after they've done an exhibition with a whole host of skills to take to move forward for in the rest of their career. So yeah, so pitching a show to Urban Shaman, it's episode 2, season 4. Urban Art Biz is an amazing program. Yeah, so let me hold on a second. So the agenda right now is I'm already introduced myself. We'll talk a little bit about Urban Shaman. We'll talk about writing a proposal, and then our exhibition process, and a little bit of supports that you can get in that process for applying for exhibitions, and then a Q&A at the end. So there's me. That's my headshot. So Urban Shaman. So we're an artist-run center that's committed to supporting the needs of emerging mid-career and established Indigenous artists through exhibitions and programming, workshops, training, residencies. We focus on kind of building a pathway between the local to the national to the international. You know, our previous directors did a lot of work in bringing exposure to our artist run center on an international level. So through writing, through publications, through residencies. So Dana Warren, who is the previous executive director, did a number of exchanges all over the world, you know, in Australia, New Zealand. And we've brought in artists from all over the world. So it's building that bridge between the local level with emerging artists and artists in the community, with also established artists as well. So we're the only gallery space in Manitoba solely mandated to work with Indigenous communities and artists. You know, we operate with Indigenous protocols. You know, we really believe in like cultural safety and you know, following like cultural ways of working. So you know, again, like we have this kind of community-based model, and we try to break down barriers. So example would be like the submission process, right? So we have many different ways that you can actually submit a show, and we're really about relationships. So submitting a show is, you know, it's not just like writing a document and sending it to us. It's actually building a relationship with us, and so we can help you along with all the steps, and that's something that a lot of galleries don't do, and you're kind of on your own. So yeah, like we like to have conversations, we like to have visits. So yeah. um this is a picture from like the early days of Urban Shaman, and I believe this was in the 91 Albert space when it originally opened. Cool stuff. Okay, so one thing to know, we operate on 4-year funding cycles. So we plan our exhibitions 4 years in advance. And that's because our funders require us to have stuff planned that far ahead of time, because we get core funding in those cycles. So we have to have some idea of what we're going to be planning. So that means that we have a lot of exhibitions already planned for the next number of years. We're currently booking for the 2027 and 2028 season right now. So don't be discouraged about that. I think one bit of advice I can give you as artists who are applying for shows is to think in longer timelines. So think about your career in like 10-year cycles. You know, where do you want to be? Where do you want to be in 10 years? Because, you know, if you submit an exhibition, you're likely not going to get a show right away. You're not going to get a show that year. And if you do, you're really lucky because someone may have a show may have dropped and they may have been able to fit you in. But a lot of galleries operate on these cycles. And that's okay. You won't be forgotten about. If you submit a show, then likely they'll get back to you right away and be able to tell you timelines if it's accepted, or if they're able to fit it in the future. So I would say don't be discouraged about those longer timelines, and actually just integrate that into the way you work as an artist and the way you plan as an artist. So think about building up work over long periods of time.
So I have a question about that. So
Yeah.
oftentimes as an artist, you're working on a piece, you're working on a show, you're working on an idea, and that sort of morphs through time. So when you say you're booking for the 2027, 2028 season, and if I apply with a show idea now, by the time that rolls around, my whole idea might have shifted, or I might have something new.
Yeah.
How does that affect the, oh, how does that affect,
Yeah.
how does that affect the,
Someone might need to mute their mic.
yeah.
Okay.
So how would that affect the artist and their work and what Urban Shaman has planned?
Yeah, I think it's totally okay for things to change. Often when we accept shows, they're not a fully formed idea. So I'll talk about that. We don't need a finished show to accept it. We just need to know that there is a idea and a general concept, that there is work that's going to be going into the show, that some of it's ready. We've accepted shows where there's no work ready, right? But it's also based on like the CV of the artist and their experience and what they've done, right? So it's a bit of a trust thing too, for us knowing, an artist is able to pull through on a show, right? So we recently just accepted a show and nothing is produced for it. And we wrote letters of support to support them in some major council grants to support the production of the work over the course of a number of years before the exhibition opens. So that's an example of something, it's not even done. And that's something that we can also think about, right, with exhibitions, is that we can support, if artists are hoping to produce work, we can write letters of support for their own individual artist grants to produce work for an exhibition as well. So things don't have to be done, things can change, things can shift. Yeah, we just didn't need to know that there's an idea behind it, and it's a good idea. So,
That's great. Okay.
okay, let me go back to this. So here are some of the things that we need from you to submit a show. So you can visit our submission page, urbanshaman.org/submissions. And maybe we want to put that link in the chat. So that you can always go back to, and it has I'll share the screen here of that page. Zoom. Stop sharing. Firefox, sure. So on our submissions page, it kind of lists everything that we need. So artist statement, we need an artist bio, we need a list of your artistic activities, resume, CV, a proposal of what you're going to do for the show, a list of the artwork that you're hoping to have in the show, and some support material. Again, these things don't have to be a fully complete idea. Again, if you're proposing a show and you have a general idea of it, we just need a couple paragraphs. It doesn't need to be fully finished. Same with your artwork list. You know, if you have an idea of a few works of yours that you want to submit, then you can list those in your list. And then you would just write in your proposal that you would be either producing more work for the show, if you're going to be applying grants to produce that work, and then support material. So, you know, images of that work or recent work that you've done, recent exhibitions that you've shown at. And again, like, this is really about us getting to know you. We have to know who you are, right? We have to know your work. And that's why it's important to submit exhibitions. You know, that's why it's important to be able to put together proposals that, you know, summarize who are you, what is your work about, you know, images of your work. That's really the only way that galleries are really going to get to know you. Um, like, social media is like an important way of sharing your work. But I'm not, as a curator at a gallery, I'm not guaranteed to see your work if you're only posting on social media. You know, like, I may not be following you. I'm not always doing curatorial research. But if you make a proposal and you send it to me, I'm guaranteed to see it. Right. So, and that goes for a lot of other galleries, right? Like, people who are planning the exhibitions at galleries and institutions, like, need to know who you are. You know, if you're not submitting, they may never know who you are unless they stumble upon you on social media, right? Or someone's talking about you. So you're almost like cutting the line by submitting shows, you know. And if someone really likes your work, then it's going to go into their list of, you know, potential exhibitions that they can carry, right? So it's really important to be able to do this process. An example is, like, you know, we've gotten a number of submissions since I started, and I've only been at Urban Shaman for less than a year, and
Mhm.
we've already accepted a number of them because they're really strong. Um, and so I haven't had to do like a ton of curatorial research in my role because people are submitting the shows to me. So that's really helpful for me. And I'm sure a lot of people at other galleries feel the same way. You know, we know it's easy when we get a show that's kind of it's formed, right? So, and also,
Mhm.
the more you could fully form your exhibition, you know, the easier it is for us, right? So it also makes it more likely and more easy for us to like accept a show.
Now, here's a
Um,
question. I have a question. Um, does a person who is submitting have to identify as an Indigenous?
at
And
Urban
how do
Shaman,
they do that?
yes. At Urban Shaman, they do have to be Indigenous to submit a show to us. We do have our member show, which is 50 to
Mhm.
500, and anyone could be a member of Urban Shaman regardless of your identity. And you can show in the 50 to 500 show, which is a sale, and it's kind of a fundraiser for Urban Shaman. But in terms of having a dedicated exhibition in our main gallery or Marvin Francis, you have to be Indigenous. We have we just have like a self-identification process right now. I think that's carried over from um a time when there was a lot of trust
Mm,
for organizations, institutions, that people would self-identify and be truthful or like understand their identity. But because of, you know, all the stuff that's going on right
mhm,
now, and you know, people who haven't been truthful about their identity and in certain positions, we will probably have to develop a policy. So I know ICCA, the Indigenous Curatorial Collective, they have a call for arts institutions to develop their policies around identification. So we'll probably integrate that when we work on our policy stuff in the new year. So, but yes.
Okay,
So
that's good to know.
you
And there's
have to identify. Yeah.
a question in the chat. Is it the same process for curators to pitch an exhibition? And I'm guessing, Liz, that means, do the curators also have to be Indigenous?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it's what I'm talking about submitting a show too, like all this entire process is going to be the same for curators submitting a group show. Yeah. One thing to know is our we're a publicly funded community arts organization, and so our budget's under $500,000. So we don't have a budget to do really big group shows. With the changes in CARFAC rates, and I'll talk about CARFAC later, it means that we can't do the big group exhibitions in the same way that we had done in the past. We have to apply for like project-based funding to do that. So it is possible to do group shows, and we are going to be hosting a group show soon. But that also has came with like project-based funding that the curator got on their own. So yeah, just one thing to know. And also as a curator, you can curate a show with one artist as well. So, and I always love shows like that. At Luther at CCAP does that fairly often, right? Curates a show, and it's just curating the work of one artist. So yeah. Let me get back to my slides here. All right, so I'll show you an example submission, and I got approval from Jason to share this, so I could actually probably put it in the chat as well. So this exhibition, Expanded Dreaming, Jason submitted early this year. And we happened to have an exhibition that kind of fell through. And we were able to plop it in. And it was a fully formed exhibition. Jason has quite a bit of experience as an artist and putting together exhibitions, and is an arts administrator. So I saw it as a great opportunity to have an established artist come to Winnipeg with a show that was already really formed. It was ready, it was pretty much ready to go. And so that's a benefit for us of getting submissions and shows that are relatively complete, is that if something falls through, then we have you on the list of shows that we can slot in. So this was an example of one that, yeah, like, Jason didn't have to wait like for 4 years, 2 years, whatever for the show. We were able to do it pretty much right away, just because we had that shift in programming. So I'll share. Okay, so it's so funny. I keep hitting the other Zoom window. Okay, here we go. Okay, sure. So this is an example of a proposal. So it has the artist and curatorial statement kind of in one. So you can do like your artist statement, which is about your work and kind of like the themes that you explore in your work, the mediums that you use, and you could have a separate like exhibition statement to your artist statement as well. Or you can just kind of merge them into one. So this is what Jason did. So he kind of talks about like what the show is going to be. And at the time it was called Countless Visions, and he ended up changing the name prior to the exhibition opening. So the first paragraph, it talks about what it is. It's a medium scale exhibition featuring work that, it talks about the conceptual side, so integrating Indigenous sensibilities with transnational experiences. Talks about you know, the central themes, traveling pilgrim, wandering mendicant, and then he talks about what the work is going to be. So, you know, it's wall mounted and constructed hybridized objects using, you know, commercial materials. How many works? 9 to 10 works. Wall mounted art and tabletop sculptures. So immediately already kind of can envision in my head, you know, he has an idea of what the show is actually going to look like, what pieces are going to be in it. You know, no special methods aside from some display plinths. So he's already like, just in 2 paragraphs, I already know that, you know, we're not going to need, this isn't going to be a hard exhibition to install. And it wasn't, you know. So very useful information. You can tell that Jason comes from an arts admin background. He's been the one on my side setting things up, right? So this is a really helpful submission to use as a template. And then he kind of talks about you know, why it's an important show, right? So the visual components of North American Asian political design, and then, you know, thinking about media as continuation of like traditional storytelling, um and then like, you know, connecting that to how it's impacts Indigenous people. So like the intercultural process, you know, plays a part in the lives of many Indigenous people. So like, so it's showing like people will be able to relate to this show, because all, you know, Indigenous people have like a cross-cultural experience just by living in cities, being exposed to other cultures, right? Um, and so immediately I was like, this show is really cool. You know, we don't see a lot of that kind of cross-cultural stuff in Indigenous spaces. And this is something that Winnipeg can use. You know, we can really grow from seeing work that's outside the bounds of what we normally think of as Indigenous art. So that's what convinced me we should have it in Winnipeg, essentially. So yeah, so it's basically like, you know, I can think about this in like kind of 3 parts. What is the show about? What are the materials and how is it installed? And like, why is it important? Um, yeah, and then a thank you. Um, I like a nice thank you. This is just a regular thank you, but you could like, you know, do it in any way that makes you feel good. And then he had, you know, and then immediately after he had like documentation of the work that's in the show. So this is like your support materials. And I'll talk about documentation later in this workshop. So, you know, reading that and then like looking at the work, I'm like, wow, this is really a really cool submission. Um, yeah, just pushes the boundaries of Indigenous art and like what we're allowed to do. And then after the images, it's an image list. So it shows the title, materials, dimensions, and year. And so he lists them all out here. And so bringing it back to Arlie's question about do things change? A bunch of this work changed prior to the exhibition actually happening. There's a number of things that didn't make it into the show, like this piece, and this piece. They didn't end up in the show at the end. Also this one. But it was like a submission that was, you know, convincing. It convinced me to have it regardless really of what he ended up putting in at the end. And then he put his CV at the end. So it lists his experience, what he's done in the past. And then this allows me to understand who he is as an artist, what his experience is. I could look at this and do some research to see his other exhibitions. And yeah, this is just about like building trust, like, you know, is, are we able to pull off this exhibition together? And is it going to be really good for the artist and good for us? So I'll talk about CV later. This is a really quality submission. And again, I don't want anyone to feel discouraged by like feeling like things might be too difficult to put together. This one's really quality. I say use it as a template, but um you don't have to have like the perfect submission to us. Write in the way that you feel comfortable, write in the language that you feel comfortable in writing. Like I really don't like when things are jargony. um I come from, my background's in like social work, and like I didn't go to art school, and I get really put off actually by overly jargony writing. um that's just me. um but also I'd say if you do write that way, also don't feel bad. Like I'm pretty open-minded person, and I would say like a lot of people who work in these positions are really open-minded. So just write in the way that you feel comfortable. Um and just think of like what I would need to hear. So what is your work? What's the materials? How is it going to impact the community? Why is it good for Urban Shaman to have that show? You just need to think about those, and whatever way you want to write is fine. This documentation is also amazing. Your documentation does not need to be this good. You can use your cell phone, use a Polaroid camera if you want. I just need to be able to see it and like get an idea of it. And yeah, your image list, this is standard formatting for image list, so it should be this way. um and again, just use the templates, use this as a template to understand how you should actually write your image list. um and again, if you have any questions, I'm always around to reach out to. And then I would say your CV as well, don't get discouraged. If you don't have a ton of art experience, that's okay. Um, Urban Shaman supports emerging artists. So if you don't have a ton of exhibitions, dating back to whenever, like, if you have no experience exhibiting galleries, your show can still be considered at Urban. But what I would say is, when you are making a CV, and I'll talk about this later, is put anything that you might feel relevant, regardless of if it's art or not, because this is really about us getting to know who you are. So if you've done volunteering, community work, like if you've done none of that and you like, hang out with your granny, like seriously, put that on there. Like, I just need to know who you are. And know that like either like you have an investment in the community, you have an investment in your art practice, um, that you have done a little bit of work to to feel like you're ready to have an exhibition at Urban Shaman, regardless of if it's artwork or not. So does anyone have any questions about that? Oh, Victoria.
I do have a question. And so when you say you have support for folks who have never exhibited before, can you explain to me like what that support is? Does that support include like taking an idea to fruition? Does it involve just administrative support? Like what support is available?
Yeah, that's actually something that we kind of partner with Creative Manitoba on too. The thing about our roles, because we're a small artist-run center, we don't have a lot of capacity to do one-on-one mentorship. Um, but I am available to answer questions. So if someone is submitting an exhibition and like they've never done it before, and they need to talk to me about like you know, that they're writing their proposal, they're documenting their work, they're putting together their CV, it's okay to talk to me about that. Right? And like Debbie Keeper's also there as well. And so we have staff that we can talk. We like to talk. But for more like intensive support, that's kind of the role of Creative Manitoba. And we'll talk about this at the end, but they have like things like coaching programs. They have a lot of workshops like this. They have their boot camp workshops. So yeah, in terms of submitting a show, you know, our support is just having conversations, and like looking over, like I can look over a submission before you formally submit it, you know, and if it's like, yeah, you can change a few things here, that's totally okay. I don't want people to feel pressure when they're submitting shows. Another thing that I'm hoping to do in the future in our new space, because we're moving in 2 years to the Marketland site, we have a few options for extra gallery space. So there's going to be a lobby in our new space that's going to be curated by the tenant committee. So it's all arts tenants who are moving in there. And then we also we're gonna have like a window display gallery. And I've been thinking about also, I kind of seen this at like the Craft Council. They have a wall in their gallery, and behind the wall they have like, it's almost like a smaller gallery space. So we can do smaller exhibitions that are selling work commercially, and there's an honorarium that the artist gets instead of like a full artist fee. Because we do have a limited budget, and if there's like really emerging artists who've never exhibited before at all, I'm trying to build opportunities and spaces for them to exhibit for the first time at Urban Shaman for an honorarium and to be able to show their work. And so eventually I want to have a bit of a program around that, that helps support those artists, and they can come out of that like mini exhibition with something for their CV, some documentation, some experience, like writing a statement, right, for that mini exhibition. So yeah. And we'll talk about other supports too at the end of this. Does that answer your question? Awesome. Okay, Leslie.
Hi, thank you for hosting this. Like, just that little bit was very informative already. I have a little bit of unease about my CV. I've done work with a known pretendian, and I have this really, like, I love the work that we've done, but I feel like because it was work with that person, I feel like a little bit of shame because of the harm she caused to Indigenous people. But so I'm wondering how I can put it on my CV without naming that person.
Yeah, that's actually a good question. I don't really know how to answer that one. I have the same issue. I have the same issue that when I was working at a gallery here and was an assistant to an artist that um he's a little bit more complicated because it has to do with the SE, like the MNO kind of political situation, Métis Nation of Ontario political situation. But I do have an artist that has that as well on a project. So I haven't quite figured out what to do with that either. It's still on my CV because I also really liked that project. And sometimes I talk about it, but I think I just, when I'm having conversations about it, I just let people know. Like I let people know that I really cared about this project, just like you did now, right? Like I really cared about this project, and you felt like it was good, and that you want to keep it on your CV, but that that you were hurt in that process. Like it's good to share those things. If anything, like that being honest about that and like vulnerable about that, like that, you know, you were affected by that, that's something that's like actually worth sharing and worth talking about. But yeah, so that's it's not really advice. I'm not entirely sure what to do, but yeah.
Liz put a good comment in the chat that if the work is yours, although created within the pretendian space, if the work is yours, you can list it as yours, where the exhibition was, and the date, title, date, and exhibition. So you can still claim the work and with, you know, the acknowledgement of the pretendian space. Such a shame, but I hear you.
Yeah. Great answer. Thank you, Liz. Yeah, any other questions about that? I can probably go on to the next thing. Here, stop share. Okay. So, okay. I kind of, in these slides, I kind of broke down, you know, the thing. So writing your exhibition statement, use clear language and avoid jargon. That's just good writing advice always. You know, what's the central concept? What's the theme? How does, you know, the art interact with the space, including public programs? And again, Jason had a really great tip. You know, why this work, why here, and why now? So, you know, why is your work being produced? You know, like from your perspective, why are you producing it, right? Why does it need to be exhibited at Urban Shaman, right? So why in Winnipeg is it helpful for your show to be here? And why now? Why at this point in time, right? Why is it relevant to what's happening now, you know, in the arts world and in the community, globally, internationally? Why now? So that's something to always think about when you're writing your statement. And if you can do that, it'll be really convincing. Writing your bio. So also a lot of people don't have a lot of experience writing bios, and it can be really daunting because you're talking about yourself. And so my big piece of advice for writing your bio is like compassion, being compassionate towards yourself and thinking about self-love and self-care. Because you have to believe in yourself, right? And you have to believe in your work. And if you're finding it hard to write about yourself, then it's important to really look at who you are and see like I have really good work. I'm a good person. Like people deserve to see my work. And you know, be interested in yourself. Almost try to like look at from, you know, another perspective, like, you know, and different forms of like psychology, right? They call that like self energy, or like the wise mind, where you can like look at yourself, and you know, not from the perspective of all the things that you're you know, worried about, and that you might feel like your art's not that good or whatever, like, you know, taking that perspective of like looking at yourself from another angle. Because I know a lot of people really struggle with that. So just starting with like, where are you from, right? We need to know where you're from. What are your mediums? What themes do you like to encounter in your work? And then some professional highlights. So key exhibitions, recognition, community work. And again, don't feel discouraged, because like, you know, a professional highlight, in my opinion, for being someone who you know, really wants to support emerging artists, can be going for tea with Granny, or taking care of your nibbling, or any of that sort of stuff. So that stuff matters to me, so when I see that. So if you don't have anything, you can do that sort of stuff. So creating your CV. This one also, again, really daunting, and it really helps to look at other CVs of other artists. So if you go to my website, I had looked at a friend and colleague of mine, Derek Wood's Morrow's CV to help me form my CV to understand, okay, these are the things that he put on there. So I'll share my screen, my CV, so you can get an idea. Mine is massive. Again, don't be daunted by this. Mine's ridiculous. But like I put my education, right? And there's a particular formatting you should use, and it's not universal. Like I just chose a formatting that worked for me. So I have the date, what I did and where it happened, basically. So I put my awards and I even put my school awards on there, like, and then professional development training. So, I had done stuff with Creative Manitoba, the arts and culture mentorship when I was like, yeah, different boards that you've maybe sat on. Um, I published stuff. So if you've ever published anything, grants that you've written and received, like, I don't know, like I saw that on one. So I'm like, all right, I'll put, and this is more for my professional, like admin work to show like, okay, this is all the money that I've applied for over the years that I've received for different organizations, public presentations, community art workshops. So like I've done a lot of those. Music stuff, like if you've ever done music performance, cultural events. I had my graphic design stuff. So basically anything that you can think of, just put it on there. Like, and if you don't have a lot of experience, right? If you have too much experience, or it gets convoluted, like I have to be careful with mine because like I've done too many, like I've lived like 100 lives, I feel like. So like I have to curate my CV so it's not like convoluted, so people could actually understand like what I'm applying for. But if you don't have like a ton of stuff that you've done, like put the little things on there. It's important to have stuff so that people can know who you are. Yeah.
And if you ever want a second eye on it, you can always contact us at Creative Manitoba. You can email me, you can phone me, and I can always spend some time and look at your work for you and just give you another viewpoint.
Yeah. And same with us, like if you can't even write it, if you're like, I can't write this, just reach out to me. Like if you have everything else done and you're like, I don't know what to do for my CV, you can reach out to me and it's not gonna inhibit your success of like applying to us. Like it's good to ask for help. There's also like a bunch of guides. So Canada Council has like a CV guide. There's a template that you can use. So I would highly recommend like downloading that template. Again, we're sending out the slides so you can get these links also from the slides. So use the Canada Council guide. That's kind of like the standard for art CVs in Canada. Support materials, again, 10 to 20 image of proposed or recent work. You can also like send your social media. If you have an artist website, you can send that. Again, like all this stuff is important to have. It's important to have an artist website. You don't have to have it right now, but thinking about working towards that is really helpful. And again, it's just because people need to know who you are. And regardless if like your work is good, if people don't know you and they don't know your work, then you're going to have trouble actually getting shows, right? So it's important to kind of be out there a bit. And you don't have to be fully blown on social media either. Like you can just have a few things up there. Okay, so making your artwork list. So I do have an Excel template that I can send, but you don't have to submit it on an Excel template. I would be so happy if you did, and if you put all your image thumbnails and stuff in there. But you don't have to do that. You can do it the way Jason did and just have a list as well. Yeah, like this is the way that I got Brianna Wentz's for for her exhibition. So it's an Excel document. It has a thumbnail of the work, artist name, title, materials, date, dimensions for all the work. That was awesome to get this like that. But not necessary. It's just, you know, if you really want to go full out, this is a great way to send artwork. So yeah, and you can, sorry.
Sorry, may I ask a question? Just because we're talking Tanshe Kia Wow, Nadine Arpin Nishikashun, and De Esprit, Red River Midshipnia. I'm so happy to be here. First off, I'm excited about this. But I had a question about materials and dimensions and descriptions. I am sort of transitioning into more multimedia installation. And I was wondering how easy is it for the gallery to facilitate multiple projections in the space? And would your new space be accommodating that type of installation more in the future?
Oh yeah, we do that all the time. Like our exhibition hand-me-downs with Melissa Johns, that are like just a few months ago, that was like so many projections. Like we had tons of projectors, we had like VR stuff going on. Brianna Wentz's show Warpaint, that's opening this Friday, has like projection mapping. You know, our media space, Marvin Francis Media Gallery, is set up to do video projection work. And our new space that we're building, we're going to have a lot of opportunities to be able to mount projectors and that sort of stuff. So yeah, and there's conventions for writing the materials for video too. Usually you just describe what type of video it is. So if it's like a VR, you just say like VR, 3D VR. Or if it's, yeah, like an actual film, like you can even list like what sort of like film, like Super 8, for example. So again, like there's online, you can find all those conventions, but really if you just stick with title, your artist name, materials, and just list those sort of things in the materials section, that's fine. And then you can put the duration of the film instead of dimensions. So yeah.
So would that mean, would you be able to provide access to that type of equipment, or is that something that the artist would be that would be part of the proposal, is how we're going to source all those?
We, for the most part, we cover like materials for exhibitions. If it's like we have an exhibition coming up where an artist is producing a lot of work, and there's going to be some interesting things that he wants to do in the space that's going to require special project grants. But for the most part, we cover materials, like we cover everything, and I'll talk about that soon. We're actually, how much more time do we have? 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me go through this really fast. I need to tell you what we do in Urban Shaman once you get accepted. So what to expect. So we use a critical path method for planning our exhibition. So it's like from beginning to end, all the dates and timelines. We use a project management software to do that. So basically, once your show gets accepted, it's going to be already planned from beginning to end, like all the dates and timelines. So when you get your contracts and that sort of stuff, we base our contracts on the CARFAC rates. So the CARFAC recommended fee schedule. So certain amounts for artist fees, we pay for shipping and transportation, we pay daily per diems for traveling artists. We cover like exhibition fees, virtual exhibition fees, promotion royalties, and that sort of stuff as well. So early on, after your show is accepted, you get a contract, and it highlights basically what you're gonna get from this experience in terms of monetary, in terms of like what we're asking of you. And then we go over the process of like packing your work properly for shipping. We we assist in curating the space. So like working with the floor plan, where your works are going to be, what sort of paint colors you're using, what sort of vinyl didactics. You know, we plan adjunct programming, things like workshops, talks, studio visits, class visits. So that stuff we try to plan early on. Like I want to be able to be starting working like, you know, like 6 months or more ahead prior to an exhibition starting, getting everything set up and organized, so we're all not like kind of living in urgency, right? And so we're adjusting things at Urban for our new exhibition schedule. We've removed a number of exhibitions. We're down to, we're going to be doing 4 exhibitions a year now instead of 6, which allow us to do more adjunct programming, and give us more time in between exhibitions to really support artists, and make sure that we're not getting like stressed and burned out. Both us and the artist is not getting stressed as well. So here's some views of the gallery. This is the main gallery. We have the Marvin Francis Media Gallery. That's a picture of the space. There's a picture of Marvin Francis. He was a long-time board member and supporter of Urban. And yeah, and then like, you know, if you do have an exhibition where you want to be producing work, if you're thinking about maybe touring the exhibition after, that sort of stuff, then my advice right now, regardless of if you're going to submit or not, is create your accounts at the councils. So create your account for Manitoba Arts Council, Winnipeg Arts Council, Canada Council for the Arts, Winnipeg Foundation, and there's many more. I put a link on there to artist producer resource that lists like all the private funders, public funders, corporate stuff. Like, be careful with the corporates, because you don't want to get funded by tar sand money. But just there's a whole list of like different foundations that you can on that website that you can you know, become a part of, and apply for. First step is creating your account. And if you're producing work professionally, even if you haven't sold anything, but you're wanting to do more professional work, you qualify for the most part as a professional artist. They have different, each of the councils have different like qualifications, and like you need to show that you've done some professional work to get a professional artist account on them. But the bar is really low. And because yeah, they, you know, these councils want to support emerging artists, right? So do that, make those accounts. It's quite important. And then like, you know, if you do get accepted for an exhibition, then yeah, there's production grants, there's travel grants, there's grants for like expanded programming, like special programs. And then for all of those, if you are accepted for an exhibition, we can write you a letter of support. And then that shows like we're able to commit a certain monetary value for your artist fees, for the royalties, basically everything that's on your contract. And so that helps your grant applications, because they know, okay, Urban Shaman has designated a ton of funds, cash, to this exhibition, and tons of in-kind value to this, and it makes it a lot more likely for your grants to get submitted or accepted. Yeah, and then support options for the submission process. Creative Manitoba, they have their coaching program. They do their artist boot camp. So there's another one, applying for exhibitions with Anita Dalio and Sarah Hodges Kolesnik. I can't pronounce her last name. And yeah, and then you could also just reach out to us if you have any questions. So I don't know if you, Arlie, if you want to expand on the coaching stuff, or if we should just go to questions.
We can just go to questions. Just that Creative Manitoba, we do coaching programs. And like Justin had mentioned, we do a lot of boot camps in conjunction with MAWA. And we also do our own programming through the Indigenous programs. So there's a lot of resources out there. And we will be sending you all of these links and a follow-up email post this workshop. So it's a little after 1, but we do have room for a question or two if you're cool to stay.
Oh yeah, final tips. We don't actually need that much. If you want to submit, if it seems too daunting to do everything, just submit something.
Yeah.
You know, submit in an email body if you have to. Again, like I'm not a fascist. Like I just want to know who you are. We want to know who you are. So even if you just submit an email body, or if you're like, I really want to submit a show and I'm having a hard time, send me that email, give me a call. We don't actually need that much.
There's a
So
question in the chat that Michelle has asked, can you share the new space floor plan for those that plan for space specific sites? Now, the
Yeah.
building's not built yet, so we do have basic blueprints. Creative Manitoba is also moving into this space, along with Urban Shaman, Mawa, and Manitoba Music. And although we have basic blueprints for them, I don't think we can share them yet because the space is still evolving.
Yeah, I can give you a sort of like the floor plan's done. Like it's not changing for us. It's done. But I can give you an idea of what it's a white box gallery.
Yeah.
It's just a rectangle. So I can give you the dimensions of the rectangle and where the door is and that sort of stuff. Like I won't necessarily send you the drawing, but I can send you my drawing of the drawing of what it's gonna, the
And
shape, and
it's support free, right?
it's support free.
Oh,
It's a white box
beautiful.
gallery, support free. Yeah. So yeah. So any questions?
I did have one, if you don't mind, if you have time. As an Ontario artist, what is there any will, but from Manitoba and is an MMF member, is there any ability to tap into that, or is there any restrictions as an out of province artist for Urban Shaman?
No. We accept exhibitions from all over the world. It is more difficult for us to do exhibitions across borders, because of insurance reasons, and shipping is more difficult, and we've ran into problems shipping across borders, like national borders. But we do not, that won't necessarily stop us if an exhibition is really good. And province to province, it's easy for us. Like it accept shows and ship work across province fairly often. So
All right. Don't forget that Brianna Wentz opens her show this Friday. It's First Friday, and so head over to Urban Shaman Gallery. And Justin, this has been great. You have made the whole process of applying for a show seem like very simple and very welcome and very generous. It's so you've taken all the intimidation and the sort of potential daunting factors out of it, which is kind of amazing.
yeah, and if you learn the skill, then you have it forever, right? And like
Yeah.
the other galleries operate similarly, and they have similar people in positions like me that are caring and that want to support emerging artists and that are able to answer questions. In terms of the artist run center world, in terms of the bigger institutions, it depends. I don't really know the bigger institution world very well. But yeah, once you have this process, you can submit to other galleries as well. And I would suggest submitting
Mhm.
all over, submit in different provinces, submit in different countries. Um, you know, like Mark Kugel curated an exhibition in Thailand, for example. And they paid all his way there and he did a big show and like, so, you know, the opportunities are endless. So yeah, like feel excited about it. And if you don't get accepted by us or by other galleries, try not to feel discouraged. Again, we work in these, you know, 4-year cycles. We're only doing 4 exhibitions a year. We're in the process of building community gallery space, but we're not there yet. I'm not going to forget about you. If a exhibition is submitted and we can't accept it, I won't forget about you. You'll go on to our list. But also like it's okay if you don't get accepted, you know, and there's lots of galleries that are able to accept work. And just keep applying and keep believing in your work and believing in yourself. Like, you know, that's my advice.
Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. And also all of these skills and tools that you've presented are all the things you need to apply for grants as well. And on November 20th is a deadline for Canada Council for the Arts creating, knowing, sharing grants for the short-term project grant, which is to develop a project up to $100,000. So look at the Canada Council site as well and start thinking about how you can put a project together, a proposal that you can pitch to Urban Shaman and also pitch to the different funding bodies to get some money to help you build your show. And other than that, reach out to us.
Oh yeah, and also tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock, we're hosting Vagina Witchcraft at Urban Shaman. Agent Horard is doing a pole performance at 7:30. Music goes on at 8. So make sure to come down to that too. It's pay what you can. So Halloween night. If you don't have Halloween plans yet, show up in your corpse paint and your, you know, your metal, your full metal hardcore garb. So yeah, then.
That's wicked. Vagina witchcraft. I love it. This is great. Thank you everyone so much. And thank you for hanging around while we went a little bit over time. We will be sending out a video to everyone who has registered. So anything that you feel like you might have missed, you won't, because you'll be able to see it. We'll also be sending a bunch of links and a link to upcoming shows and workshops. And again, I want to thank everyone for being here.
Thank you.
Merci, much appreciated.